and internationally. She has the distinction of being the youngest person ever to serve as the executive officer of the AFL-CIO, and also the first woman to be elected as Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO. Brothers and sisters, get on your feet. It is an honor to introduce this vibrant fighter for working class people. Please give a warm machinist welcome to my friend and your friend, Sister Liz Shuler.
Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. It is we who plowed the prairies, built the cities where they trade, dug the mines and built the workshops, endless miles of railroad laid. Now we stand outcast and starving amid the wonders we have made, but the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. They have taken untold millions that they never toiled to earn, but without our brain and muscle, not a single wheel can turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. In our hands is placed a power greater than their hoarded gold.
Solidarity forever. You were singing earlier. Wow, I'm out of breath. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm honored to be here, and I want to thank Bob for the invitation, and as I look out in this room, I am just overwhelmed. Truly, it's an honor to be with this powerful union, the IAM. Yeah! And I was in Toronto 4 years ago, and I hear actually not many of you were actually in Toronto 4 years ago because you have so many new people, which is also very exciting. And I remember you had this awesome bell in Toronto. Is that here this time? It's been stolen? No kidding. I think I might have saw it at the Billy Goat Tavern over by the L. Could that have been? Okay. So Bob, thank you. We're grateful for your leadership and for playing such a critical role in our labor movement, and really for being here with us at a time we need you the most. So I am so grateful for you, and it's excellent having you on our executive council now of the AFL-CIO. And he's a leader in the labor movement, not just for the IAM, but beyond. By the way, could I have a hug? I have a feeling that's a trend that's starting for who knows how long. And to my sister, Dora Cervantes, again, a true sister. She and I get to work together a lot. She's a real role model for so many, obviously wearing her financial hat, but all the responsibilities that she has. I just want to thank you for your dedication to our movement. And sisters and brothers, again, I'm honored to be here, and I want to say hello to your leadership, the Executive Council. I bring greetings from the 12.5 million union men and women in the AFL-CIO. And I know that you heard from my working partner, Rich Trumka, yesterday, rumor has it. And I'm not even going to try to match that. And also Reverend Barber, not going to try to match that. So I'm going to attempt to do three things. One, keep you awake after lunch. They were serving meatloaf earlier. I don't know if it's, yeah. 2, build on the attention that you've given to organizing and talk about why that matters system-wide, labor movement-wide. And 3, make a case for why you should focus on this upcoming election, even though we say this one is the most important election you'll ever face, but really why it is. So, but one thing before I dive into all of that, I had a mentor that came from the machinists. And he was an invaluable source of advice and counsel to me when I first started at the AFL-CIO. And he's been a mentor even since he's retired. And he sits on my desk every day at the AFL-CIO. And you're wondering, what? He does. And so I have his face on a little wooden stand. And every time the going gets tough, I say, WWTD, what would Tom do? Right? Does everybody see this? It's a little coin with his face on it. So now I have to get a new one that actually has Bob's face on it. And I'm gonna go with WWBD, right? So the machinists are ever present at the AFL-CIO, and we're so grateful. So one of the reasons that I'm so excited to be here today, actually, is because the IAM never stops pushing. You are always looking ahead, and you're adapting to change, and you're adapting to a changing membership that is constantly moving. And I just want to say, look at your commitment to diversity, because it is remarkable. I see it here. I hear it every time someone says President Martinez. I have to applaud you. You have one of the most diverse executive councils in the labor movement. You should be very proud of that, so give yourselves a hand. I don't see that often. And so we want to keep building on that. We want to keep pushing that all the way to the local level. We want to bring in, and as you have shown here, you have so many new people at this convention. It's a testament to bringing in more young people. I know not all the new people are young, but that young machinist program probably has something to do with it, right? You have a bench. So we need more young people to become activists. We need more women as stewards. We need more people of color on the bargaining committees and new faces and voices. Really, it's everyone's responsibility to recruit and retain newcomers so that our leadership reflects our membership, right? That's the goal. And that's how we move forward together and build a stronger labor movement. And diversity is going to help us grow, no doubt about it. But we also have to find ways to become better organizers, because the status quo isn't working. Let's face it. We need to find new ways of doing things that are more nimble and more responsive. And you know better than anyone that organizing today requires a multi-pronged approach. It begins with listening. What a concept, right? Listening to our members and what our members want and need. It calls on us to be flexible and strategic and resilient. And our strategies have to incorporate how we deal with an employer who just blatantly ignores the law and denies us a voice. All of that has to factor into our organizing strategies. And I know Bob Martinez is unveiling a new organizing model this week, if it hasn't been done already. And that focuses on smaller, specialized teams and prioritizing, giving organizers the tools and the resources that they need to do their jobs. And as an organizer myself, I applaud that, and I can't wait to see what comes out of this. And we want to replicate it. We want to move out those ideas and best practices throughout the labor movement. So that is incredibly exciting. And let's face it though, we have absolutely no time to lose when it comes to organizing and growth. do we? Complacency is our enemy. And we're going to beat back complacency, aren't we? We're going to beat back complacency in every industry, in every corner of North America, because we're going to organize, organize, organize. That's right. And we're seeing some good things happening, and often we don't focus on the good things because we think there's so much negative around us, right? So let's focus for a minute on the positive things going on. We're seeing workers organizing in the South, where we have no intention of stopping. And we'll just say to those, politicians in the South, you don't decide where unions are welcome. Workers decide where they're going to organize. And Governor Nikki Haley, she says she wears high heels, right? Boo! She wears high heels to kick unions out of the South, I think was her quote. Well, I'll take our work boots over her high heels any day. And trust me, memo to Nikki Haley, unions are going to be in the South long after she's going to be in the South. So we're there to stay. We're also making inroads, organizing inroads, in the emerging digital economy. And a lot of these technology companies that we keep hearing about, big tech companies, they like to say that they're not employers, right? That they're just platforms. And that the labor movement is just opposed to change, and that we're stodgy, and we don't want new ideas, and we're not innovative. Well, let's be clear. The AFL-CIO and the union movement absolutely is innovative. But we're not going to allow 21st century technology to be used as an excuse for 19th century labor practices, right? That's right. So we're fighting for smart and fair policies that ensure that people who work for on-demand employers enjoy the rights and protections that every worker deserves. Fair pay, overtime, unemployment insurance, family and medical leave. And if they, hopefully, want to join the union movement, they'll enjoy collective bargaining. So that's the idea. And I want to commend the relationship that you formed with Uber in New York City. And we know that, of course, it's not a traditional union arrangement as we know it, but you're helping give drivers a say over their working conditions. And you're establishing a relationship with those Uber drivers and helping workers form a bond with each other. And this is collective action. It's collective action at its finest. And the groundwork that you have laid in New York is absolutely innovative and cutting edge. And I'm going to say it's likely going to be replicated all over North America and maybe even beyond that, right? And if Uber drivers have the ability to form a union, they know exactly who to call, right? The IAM. So whether it's Uber, whether it is GE or John Deere or Southwest Airlines, I could go on and on, right? The machinists are building America and moving it forward. And you're building and positioning your union for the future. And you know what I'm talking about. Your state-of-the-art education and training facilities. You're preparing union members to ladder up all across this country in their careers. You have the young machinists, as I mentioned earlier, is inspiring and empowering the next generation of activists. And in the airline industry, you've overcome the impact of September 11 and the financial crash and our broken bankruptcy laws. And your victory at New Jersey Transit showed the true power of solidarity. That's right. And workers from Mobile, Alabama to the Pacific Northwest are standing together for a voice on the job. Now, there are so many folks out there who want to write our obituary, right? Don't you feel like every other day you're seeing a headline that's like the union movement is dead, right? And only on Labor Day are we hearing, okay, wait a second, there's a labor movement. That's right. And they're actually making change in the economy. So there's this perception that we need to sort of constantly beat back, right? So, I don't know, do you think we're making change in the economy? Do you think we're making change in the economy? Absolutely. Now, did you know, this is a fun fact, for those who are on Twitter, listen to these words. There are more workers going to the bargaining table in 1516 than at any point in recent memory. Do you know how many people that is? It's 5 million people going to the bargaining table, okay? And do you think that that has an impact on communities and standards and wages for everyone? Absolutely. So that is how we're impacting the economy, right there. Young people are out calling attention to the student debt crisis. You know, on average, young people are graduating with $30,000 in debt, and that's before they can even find a job, if they can. Activists are demanding a fair immigration system. Working women are on the front lines demanding equal pay and an equal say. And what about the fight against TPP? What about that? You think we're impacting that? Oh yeah. Thanks to the IAM and all of you and the labor movement, we have stopped the Trans-Pacific Partnership in its tracks. That's right. And Bob knows this. They thought that was a done deal in Washington, D.C. They had the most powerful lobbyist advocating for it that you could find, President Obama, right? And we were up against, the deck was stacked against us. And so we cannot rest, though. Through this election cycle, the minute the election's over, we've got to put the pressure back on and hold those politicians accountable, because they're going to try to bring it up again before the Congress is out. So I know that you'll be thinking about that. But the point is that we have a lot to celebrate. We know we're making an impact. The Democratic primary, another great example, right? We saw a primary that had our issues front and center. That doesn't happen by accident. What about the party platform in Philadelphia? Our issues front and center, and reflecting our vision and our values. And now the labor movement is in the midst of the most sophisticated and far-reaching ground game in our history. And in 62 days, we are going to defeat Donald Trump and elect Hillary Clinton President of the United States. Woo! I love the way that sounds. So I was there in Philadelphia. Anybody else there? I don't know if any of you were delegates to the convention, but it was quite amazing to watch Hillary accept the nomination. And as she took the stage, I would say there wasn't a dry eye in the room, because history was being made. And I particularly, of course, being a woman, was thinking about all the women that really came before Hillary to make that even possible, right? I thought of Shirley Chisholm, the first African-American woman elected to Congress. I thought of Mother Jones, whose actual picture hangs in my office. And I thought of all the extraordinary women that I meet every single day on this job, the mothers, the sisters, the daughters, who truly make our country great. And that makes me just even more committed to making sure that we tell everyone that Hillary Clinton is the right candidate at the right time. She understands our issues and she shares our values. And I know when Bill Clinton nominated her, and I don't know if you watched it on TV, everyone said, during that speech, they kept saying, gosh, I didn't know that. Or, wow, I had never heard that before. And you got to know her. You got to hear the arc of her career. And that as a young activist and lawyer, Hillary fought to make life better for women and children. And as First Lady, she led the charge for affordable, quality health care. As Senator, she stood up for our first responders, and she helped upstate New York's manufacturing base get back to work. I think she even started the manufacturing caucus in the U.S. Senate. As Secretary of State, she repaired our image abroad and spoke out for civil, human, and women's rights. And in fact, I think the moment she was in Beijing at this global women's conference, I think it was about 20 years ago, she was talking about women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights. And at that very moment, Donald Trump was talking about how he hits the ceiling if dinner isn't ready when he gets home. So quite a comparison, right, between these two folks. So Hillary is going to fight for us. She's going to fight for good wages and great benefits and fair schedules. She's a champion for issues like paid leave and quality, affordable childcare, and yes, equal pay for equal work. That's right. Can you believe we're still talking about that? It's 2016, although I always say the best way to equal pay for women is a union contract. So there you go. Hillary is a relentless supporter of unions, and she strongly opposes the TPP and has called for an entirely new direction on trade. And she is going to appoint a National Labor Relations Board that actually not only protects collective bargaining, but promotes collective bargaining. That's right. And what about her opponent? You never heard of him before, right? Okay, have you ever seen a candidate like this before in your entire lives? Donald Trump, where do you begin? He has called prominent women dogs and pigs. He has said there will be equal pay when women start doing a better job. These are actual quotes. He remarked that putting a wife to work is a dangerous thing. Ooh. And just a few weeks ago, Trump suggested, get this, that women who face sexual harassment on the job should just find another job. Like it's her fault, right? I mean, it's unbelievable what comes out of this man's mouth. So he's not only unfit to be president, his policies would be a disaster for working people, a disaster. Why? You know why, but I'm going to go through it again. He says he doesn't just support right to work, he, quote, loves it. Repeat that line wherever you go, please. He has repeatedly mistreated employees at his very own companies. He says our wages are too high. You think our wages are too high? And his business model is essentially to do what he claims he's against, which is to move jobs to right-to-work states and overseas. So I guess the bottom line here is, so I travel a lot, right? And I'm listening and talking to a lot of people about this election. And I can't tell you how often I hear that people say, oh, I'm just not that excited about this election. Or, I just don't really like the candidates that much. Have you heard this? Right? And it reminds me a lot of the year 2000. Do you remember the election in 2000? You had Al Gore, George W. Bush, and then you had Ralph Nader, of course. But people weren't that excited about that election, and people sort of felt the same, like they were a little bit unenthusiastic, right? Or like, I don't really like them. So just like in 2000, you also had, I think, so we're headed for that very same thing, right? So we have Gary Johnson and I think Jill Stein in the mix, right? Drawing votes away. And that election, though, in 2000 came down to 537 votes in Florida. Think about that. And if you think about the people who say, like, I'm just not that excited, do you think if you could go to those people now and say, remember 2000? And what happened in 8 years after that? What if that happens again? Would that motivate you to vote? Right? So think about that. And maybe talk to people about that. Like, what would those people do now? Think about the effect that it's going to have on the races up and down the ballot. Think about the Supreme Court. What's going to happen to the Supreme Court? So this is more than just an election. This is about what kind of America our children and grandchildren will inherit. That's a big responsibility, folks, and it rests on us. So, like many of you, I come from a union family, and my dad was a lineman at a utility company in Portland, Oregon. And he grew up so poor that he and his 4 siblings lived in a one-room, what they called then a picker's cabin in the orchards. And he went to work at age 12 blasting tombstones to pay for dental care because they didn't have any dental insurance, obviously. But he started work really early. He enlisted in the Marine Corps right after graduating high school, and he got sent straight to Vietnam. And when he returned, he needed a job. And he got lucky. He was hired at the power company, Portland General Electric. And he started out as a hole digger, like literally digging the holes that power poles go in. And through hard work, he earned a spot in the union's lineman apprenticeship, IBEW. And he had a job with a family-sustaining wage that could put food on the table and support his family. And this was back in the days when the utility companies were actually almost like a family. And I know many of you work for companies that were like that once upon a time. And so I worked at that same utility. My mom worked at that same utility. But the linemen were organized and the clerical workers were not. And so after I graduated from college, the women I worked with were starting to organize. And it became pretty clear that linemen, power linemen, big burly dudes doing the house calls wasn't going over that great for women clerical workers. So that's why I signed up as an organizer. And each conversation that I had on the doorstep or in those living rooms was kind of a window into what every worker wants. And that's respect. Like, we're not asking for much, right? And that experience made me realize what workers coming together was like and how you get a stronger voice on the job. And, you know, it was what I wanted to do. And I think that's why you do what you do. And everyone here probably has a story just like that. So I became an organizer and I went to work for the IBEW and I never looked back. And I was thinking about this, and the reason I tell this story is because I was back in Oregon a few weeks ago and I was, thinking about all of those people I worked with, and, I was with my dad, and I thought about how much the union has provided our family, right? It's unbelievable. And my parents were able to put a roof over our head and food on the table because of the union, right? And that's it. That's what this is all about, is we're not asking for the world. We want to raise our families. We want to pay our bills. We want to, be able to have a decent retirement. We want to perhaps send our kids to college or a trade school. But more than anything, we want to provide our children with a better life than our own. And that's the American dream. That's the American dream, and it's fast disappearing. And everyone in this room knows that American dream story because you've lived it. And sisters and brothers, everyone in this country, in North America, deserves that opportunity, deserves that dream. And it's up to us to fight for it and make sure everyone has access to it, right? That's right. So we're going to keep organizing, and we're going to keep growing our labor movement, and we're going to keep pushing ourselves, right? We're going to keep pushing ourselves to work harder than ever before in this election and to stand up for Hillary when you're talking to your friends and neighbors and those questions come up about, oh, you know, I don't really like those two candidates. Are you ready? Are you ready for what you're going to say? And you're going to recruit folks, not just talk to them. You're going to recruit them to work on the phones and knock those doors. No regrets. No regrets. We don't want to wake up on November 8th like we did in 2000, right? And wish that we had done more. So I appeal to you, and I will just say, as I leave the stage, the machinists have activism like none other, and it's time to turn it on. Will you do that? Yeah. Will you do that? Yeah. It's our time. Thank you, machinists. Take my Tom.